Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2 of my Swiss Army medic bag build. If you're coming back from the first part, thank you. If not, hi, my name is Paul. I'm an artist, builder, creator, whatever you want to call me, and this time I decided to dabble in building a leather bag from scratch. Never built one, but I'm on the journey. So when we left off in the last video, I had just cut out the template for the video out of 2 pieces of leather. There were 4 involved altogether, but I only had the front and the pocket piece that I needed. So where are we now? Well, let's get started. First thing I did after cutting out the leather was going to dye it. I ended up using a light brown dye. I also have some little pieces of leather that I'm using on the bag, which are for the strap and for the closure. First thing I did to dye those is I dipped them right into the dye. This is called dip dyeing, and this is how I normally like to dye my pieces. It gives a nice even coat. So basically I took those pieces, put them in the dye, rubbed them around real quick, pulled them out, let them drip, and put them on the paper. They were done. I dyed the inside of the bag first, just to give it a nice coat so it didn't have that leather look. After that, I turned it over and applied the dye with a rag to the outside. It just gave it a more worked-in, handmade type of look by using a rag. Rub the rag in, hit the sides of the leather, let everything dry. After it dried a little, I put in a dark brown dye. I mixed it in with some of the light brown and then kind of spotted on and re-wiped it onto the bag just to give it a little style. Now, I dyed the bag before I cut the notches in it. And the reason for that, again, is like I stated last week, if I had cut the notches out first, after I dyed the leather, you would start seeing brown lines where I notched out the leather because the leather was thinner, so the dye would soak through and leave a line. Didn't really want that look, so that's why I'm dyeing first. After dyeing, I brought it inside and I applied an atom wax. Now, the atom wax is just there to give it a little shine and protect the bag. Because I'm going to be doing work on the bag, I'm going to be punching holes with rivets. I'm going to add button snaps. I'm going to be notching out the back. I wanted to add a little protection to the front so it doesn't get completely scratched up. Of course, it's going to get a little character on it as I'm working on it upside down. But this atom wax will help protect the bag a little more as I'm working on it. After applying the atom wax, I ended up working on the back of the bag leather in order to smooth it out. I used a burnishing gum called Tokenol. You basically apply this with a spatula, glue spreader, whatever you have, and you make it real thin, and then you take a glass burnisher, which is basically a thick piece of glass, and you rub it on it and it smooths it out. And this is great for the inside of a bag because that way when you're reaching into it, putting things into it, it's just a nice smooth surface when you're working on it. It's not a rough leather surface. Basically, it just provides a smooth surface. You can also use it on the edges of your leather if you want to smooth that down as well. I wanted to move on to notching the back of the bag. Now, unfortunately, I didn't have a hand tool that I could use to notch out the leather. I looked at some chisels, I looked at some V-groovers of things I owned, but I didn't have anything and I didn't want to buy anything. So I decided to go with my Dremel. Now, I looked at the inside of the bag and it's hard to tell if those notches are handmade or machine-made. Who knows? But either way, I really don't care. I wanted to get a nice notch. So I took my Dremel and I took a V-groove router bit and I lowered it, and you can see in the photo, it's not sticking out a lot. It's very small. What I did then is I had to line this up in the proper spots on the bag where you see the lines that I made referencing where the folds need to go. Now, it turns out the center of the bit was 30 millimeters away from the end of my ruler, which I was using as a straight edge. So in order to get a perfect straight line, I measured that out, clamped it down, added some weight so the ruler wouldn't move around, and then just ran the router through, nice and smooth. It kept it clean. It's all this dust. It's all leather dust. It's not sawdust. And, well, I guess it is sawdust, but it's not wood. It's leather dust. And it just gave nice grooves. I had to figure out a little at the top which way to go first because I didn't want the routing grooves to go into certain parts of the bag. But here's a quick time lapse of me routing all the pieces and eventually getting all the folds I needed. I think this looked great. And I was very happy. You can see I folded up the bag just to get an idea on how close it was starting to look to the other bag. I was very happy. It's starting to come together. Of course, the thing I do not have on this bag yet is the hardware. And I want to go over the hardware a little that I'll be using in the bag. It's going to be a little different than what's on the bag right now. First thing is I'm planning on using double head cap rivets for most of the stuff. They're simple, they hold well, and I think they'll do a good job. For the rest of it, I was looking for buttons that were antique brass. I couldn't find the knurled buttons you see here, so I decided to use a similar size button. It's just flat, but it's going to give it a clean look between all the stuff. I'm changing the D-rings on the back from silver to an antique brass as well, and that way everything will match. Now, I'm debating about using these buffalo nickel head snaps that I found to replace on the sides of the bag. Now, they're not brass, but they kind of have a little flare, so they might stand out. Haven't really decided yet if I'm going to use them. I like the look of them. I just don't know if I want to use them yet. And the only other thing I'm working on now is I've noticed that the back of the bag is held in with really strong rivets. And this is probably so the shoulder strap holds on and the bag doesn't fall apart. I don't think I'm going to use double cap rivets on there. I'm doing some tests with regular copper rivets, but I'm getting brass ones. I'm calling them copper rivets because if you look up copper rivets, you'll see the rivets I mean, but I'm getting them in brass. And they basically are a hand rivet, but they give it a style look like you see here, but they're also a lot stronger. They're meant for thicker leather, whereas the double head rivets, the double head snap rivets can only go a certain thickness, and I think they're going to hold better than other rivets versus the double cap rivets. So that's where I am at the moment. And next step is working on the buttons and getting the snaps in the right place and getting the rivets in the right place. I did also cut out the side gussets, as you can see here, and they are going to be used as templates right now because I noticed they're a little small for the actual bag I built. Even though I measured things, they just don't fit right, so I'm going to cut some new ones out. And then I'm going to use the same leather to make for the straps on the inside, so they'll all match. So that's where we are at the moment, and I'm doing a few more tests on rivets and button snaps. As you can see here, I've been testing some depths and some other things on the button snaps. Once I get those right, I will start building the bag. I don't want to rush this part. So that will be in the next video. I can't guarantee it's going to be a finished video. It might just be a progress video, but it could be the end. If I can get this into 3 parts, that would be fantastic. So again, thanks for joining us. You can follow me on social media for photo updates and small video updates. And hopefully I'll see you back here for the final build of this bag. And then I'll see what I'll do. If I'm going to sell it, probably not. But I may make a template available on some sites because people have been asking me about using this template for future builds. So again, thanks very much. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.